Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dave with Evil Eye Gaming. Today we're going to continue on with making our AI for our third-person cover shooter. And today I want to take care of what happens when we set our enemy character to patrol. Right now there's nothing in the AI tree for him to do, so we're going to go ahead and change that up. Now the first thing that we're going to have to do is add a nav mesh to our map. So up here at the top, I'm going to go ahead and search for nav mesh, and we'll find a nav mesh bounds volume. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this out into our world, and you want to make sure that this overlaps with the floor. Now if you don't see anything inside of the nav mesh like right now, you can turn on the nav mesh projection by hitting P, and it'll show you the green area. That's going to show you all the areas that are calculated to be navigable by the AI. So what we want to do is we want to take this and we want to scale this so that it ends up covering all of our floor area. As such. So you can see all the floor is going to be green. And that's going to be all the area that the AI can walk on. I'm going to turn it off by using P again. Next, we're going to have to do some setup in our base enemy character. So I'm going to go into our characters folder, into our enemy characters, and I'm going to open up our base enemy character blueprint. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is under components, I'm going to hit add component, and I'm going to search for a billboard. And I'm going to select the billboard, and I'm going to call this Waypoint 1 Billboard. And then over to the right where it says sprite, I'm going to click the drop down, and under view options I'm going to check show engine content, and I'm going to search for target, and I'm going to select the target icon. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add another component, and it's also going to be a billboard. I'm going to call this Waypoint 2 Billboard. And once again, I'm going to go over to the sprite, and I'm going to search for the target icon. I'm going to select that. And if we go into our viewport now, you're going to see that there are these target icons that kind of occur. Right now, they're centered on the center of the capsule. So I'm going to grab each one of them and I'm going to drag and drop them on the mesh. In the transform, I'm going to set the location of the X for the first one to 150 and the Z to 0. And for the second one, I'm going to set the location of the X to negative 150 and the Z to 0 as well. And if we compile and save this, and if we go into our map, you're now going to see that there are these two visible icons that exist on each side of the character. And if we select the character, you're going to see the Billboard 1 and the Billboard 2 here, and we can actually use them to manipulate them and move them around the map. So we're going to go back into our base enemy character, and for these billboards, I want to actually go to the right, and under rendering, I want to uncheck visible, and that's going to make them disappear. Reason standing is we only want these visible when our character is set to be in patrol. So in order to accomplish this, I'm going to click on the construction script, and I'm going to drag out a reference to each one of these billboards. Now, we want this to happen when our combat status is equal to patrol. So I'm going to drag out a reference to our combat status. And I'm going to drag from that, and I'm going to search for a switch. And we're going to find the switch on combat status enum. And we're going to connect that up to our construction script. And then each one of these billboards here, we want to make visible in the event that we go down the patrol combat status. So from the billboard here, I'm going to drag off, and I'm going to search for set visible. And we'll select the set visibility, and we'll hook from our patrol into the set visibility. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this for the second billboard and connect the target in. And then for the new visibility, we want these to be visible. So I'm going to check new visibility checked. And we're going to go ahead and compile and save. And if we go back to our map, and if we select our enemy character, and we go to the default settings where his combat status is, if we select guard, the icons are going to disappear. And if we select patrol, they're going to go ahead and appear. And that's all we're going to need to do in the construction script. So I'm going to go back over to our event graph. And now we need to get the locations of these waypoints here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag out a reference to each one of these. And I'm going to drag off of the billboard, and I'm going to search for get world location. And I want to go ahead and promote this to a variable. And so this is for waypoint 1 billboard. So I'm going to name this vector waypoint 1. And then I'm going to copy this get world location. And I'm going to plug our waypoint 2 billboard into it. And I'm going to promote that to a variable. And we'll call this waypoint 2. And we'll go ahead and connect this up. So when we end up beginning playing the game, it's going to grab the locations of these two billboards, and it's going to set these as vectors in our enemy character. So we can go ahead and compile and save. And I'm going to go back to our main window, and we're going to go into our AI folder. And first I want to address the can see player BTS. It's not really particularly well named. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and rename it. And I'm going to call this change combat status. And then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to open up our enemy AI behavior tree. And we'll see up at the top here, the change combat status BTS is now in place. And I want to actually go ahead and open this up and make a couple of modifications to it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break the links between the set blackboard values. And I want to actually put in a couple of checks. So I'm just going to kind of drag this all off to separate sections here. So the first thing we do is we get our combat status and we set our combat status. And we're perpetually doing this all the time when we really don't need to. So really what we could do here is I'm going to grab the combat status Blackboard key selector, and we're going to go ahead and get value as enum. And then I'm going to grab our combat status from our base enemy blueprint, and we want to double check to see if these are the same. And then at the end of this, I'm going to go ahead and put in a not. And we'll go ahead and insert a branch. Now, if our combat status on our blackboard is the same as our combat status on the enemy character, we don't really want to do anything. So in this case, since it's performing a non-operation, so if they're not equal, that's what we want to go ahead and set the blackboard value. So when these two are not equal, it's true, and we want to go ahead and set the blackboard value. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to drag this over a little bit here. And from our cast to enemy character, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in a sequence. And I'm going to hook the then 0 up to the branch that we just created. So next thing we do is we end up seeing if the player character, or in this case, we just get the player character from our enemy blueprint and setting it on the blackboard. And we only really need to ever do this once. since this is only a single player game. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag this over. And we really just need to check to see if the player character value has been set. Because once this gets set, we set it in here, and then we're done with it. So from our player character here, I'm going to drag off, and I'm going to get our equals. And we're going to leave the second selection here to be blank. So we want to see if this has not been set yet. But we want to check to see if it has been set and if it's not. So I'm going to drag off from the end of this and put in a not operator. And we're going to use a branch. And we'll connect our not operation into the branch. And I'll go ahead and connect our then one into this new branch. And we'll connect the true into the set blackboard value as object. But like I said earlier, we only need to do this once. So I'm going to drag off from our true here, and I'm going to search for a do once. And we're going to go ahead and plug that into place. And I have to make sure to reconnect our as base enemy character blueprint cast over here into our target on our getting our player character reference there. And then lastly, we're going to add a third pin, and we're going to drag our then to, and we'll just connect it down to our do once when we set the combat type. And then we only do the set combat type once ever, so we only really need to do once ever, and we don't need to check for anything. And that's just going to make sure that we're not constantly running all kinds of stuff over and over again when we don't really need to. So to summarize, when we come in, the then one is going to go ahead and check our combat status on our blackboard. And it's going to compare that to the combat status on our enemy character. If they're not equal, then we'll go ahead and set that value. And then we're going to check the value of the player character variable on our enemy character. And if this has been set, then we're going to go ahead and perform a do once. And we're going to set that value in our blackboard. And then finally, we just have a do once where it's going to grab the combat type from our enemy character. And it's going to go ahead and set that on the blackboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and compile and save, and we can close out of this. And the next thing we're going to need to do is when we enter the patrol status, we don't have anything in there, but we do have those two values of waypoints that we set using the billboards. And we need to go ahead and get those values. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new task that's going to execute before we actually do any movement. So at the top here, I'm going to click on New Task, and we're going to base it on our BTT task blueprint base. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into our main window here, and we're going to go ahead and rename this. And I'm going to call this get waypoints underscore BTT. And then we're going to go into our get waypoint BTT, and we're going to have to set up what happens in here. So first we're going to add an event. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to search for execute AI. And we're going to have the event receive execute AI. And the first thing I want to do is I want to put in a branch, and I want to see if this has already been run. So I'm going to add in a new variable. It's going to be a Boolean, and I'm going to call this variable waypoints set. I'm going to drag this out, and we're going to connect it into our condition on the branch. Now, if our waypoints have already been set for true, it's going to be really easy. We just want to drag off and finish execute. And we wanted to set the value of success to true. But if we haven't set the waypoints yet, I'm going to go ahead and drag off of our controlled pawn here, And we're going to go ahead and cast to our base enemy character. And we'll connect that into our false. And then we're going to go ahead and from our cast here, get the waypoints 1 and 2. And now we have to set these in our blackboard. So I'm going to go ahead and under our variables here, I'm going to add a new variable. And I'm going to call this waypoint 1. And the type is going to be a blackboard key selector. And we're going to make it public. And then I'm going to add a second variable. And I'm going to call it waypoint 2. Once again, it's going to be a blackboard key selector, and it's going to be made public. So I'll drag out these waypoints, and we'll get them. And so first, we want to go ahead and waypoint 1, we want to set as a vector. And we'll do the same thing with waypoint 2. And we'll connect the values from waypoint 1 that we got from our base enemy character into the value. And then the same thing with waypoint 2. And now that we've set these values, we want to go ahead and we want to set our waypoint set. And we want to set this to true. And then once again, I'm going to copy this finish execute. And we're going to place 1 on the end of here. And we want the success to be checked to true. So what we're doing is we're checking to see if we have already set our waypoints. If we have not, we're going to cast to our enemy character. We're going to grab the values of waypoint 1 and waypoint 2 from our enemy character. And then we're going to set these values to our blackboard. We're going to set our waypoint set to true, and then we're going to signal that we finished executing the task. If we've already set our waypoints, it's going to go ahead and just finish execute with a success. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to compile and we're going to save. And I'm going to close this and we're going to go back to our behavior tree. So from our patrol sequence here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag out and we're going to get that task, get waypoint BTT. Now we don't have any values already set up for combat or for the waypoint 1 and waypoint 2. It just shows the combat status and all the other values we already have on our blackboard. So we're going to go ahead and go over to our blackboard. We're going to add a new key vector. And we'll call this waypoint 1. And we'll create a second one that we'll call waypoint 2. We'll save that and we'll go back to our behavior tree. And if we select our BTT blueprint task here, we can set the waypoint 1 to waypoint 1 on our blackboard, and we can set the waypoint 2 to the waypoint 2 on our blackboard. And then for the task node name here, I'm going to call it set waypoints. Now, to get our enemy character to actually move to the waypoints, it's going to be really easy. So from our sequence here, I'm going to drag down. And I'm going to search for a move to task. And then we're going to select that move to task. And to the right here, the blackboard key is going to be set to our waypoint 1. Once he gets to that, I want him to wait for a couple of seconds. So I'm going to drag off of our patrol sequence. And I'm going to search for a wait. And to the right in the wait time, I'm just going to set this to 2 seconds. Then once he's finished waiting, I'm going to drag off again. And I'm going to grab another move to. Once again, I'm going to set the blackboard key, but I'll set it to waypoint 2. And then once he gets to his waypoint 2, I'm going to drag off one more time. And I'm going to add another wait. And once again, I'll set it to wait for 2 seconds. Now it's getting a little cramped on our behavior tree here. So let's try letting it auto arrange. So right click and select auto arrange. and it'll reorganize all the tasks and everything on here so they kind of fit. Sometimes this can work well, sometimes it may not, so I would be careful with using it. In this case, it didn't work out too bad. So when our patrol sequence is activated, it's going to go ahead and grab the waypoints from our character if it hasn't already done so. It's going to move to waypoint 1. It's going to wait there for 2 seconds. It's going to move to waypoint 2, and he's going to wait there for another 2 seconds. And then it's going to exit out of this tree. And as long as he hasn't changed his combat status, it'll go ahead and re-enter the patrol status. He'll check to see if he's set his waypoints, which we already know we have, so it'll basically just auto-complete this task. And then we'll go ahead and perform these actions again. So we can go ahead and save. And I'll go ahead and hit save all here. And then if we grab our character, I'm going to space these waypoints out. So to move them around, just select the billboard and the details panel here. And we're going to move them around. And one thing you kind of want to make sure to do is keep them on the ground as much as possible. You don't want them floating up in the middle of the air, otherwise that's going to cause some serious issues. But let's go ahead and see what happens. So if I go up to play, I'm going to click the down arrow next to it, and I'm going to click on simulate. So he goes ahead and he moves over to his waypoint 1. He's waiting there. And then he heads directly over to waypoint 2. And then he waits there again. And if we want to see the behavior tree in actual action, you can click on the tab for the behavior tree, and it'll actually show what task it's actually running at any given time. So you can kind of watch what's going on as your AI is doing it. All right, so I'll go ahead and stop this. And the one thing you'll notice is he's just kind of moving around in his T-pose. So we want to go ahead and add some animation to our character. In order to do this, I'm going to actually use a combination of non-root motion and root motion. For his general movement around, I am going to use non-root motion. And then probably for activities like him taking cover behind an object or doing special things, I'm going to use the root motion for those. So we're going to have to grab some non-root motion animations that we already got rid of. So I'm going to go over to our launcher, and we have that Scratch project that I've been using. And we're going to go ahead and add the rifle set, or the Rifle Anim Set Pro, to our Scratch project. Now I've already done this, so it's asking if I want to overwrite, but we're going to let it do it. And then we're going to go ahead and open up our Scratch project. And now if we want to move animations over here, we're going to have to find out what we're looking for. So in the folder, we're going to go into our animations and we're going to find our in-place animations here. And there's a couple of animations that I really want. So I'm going to search for the rifle idle animation. And I'm going to select the rifle idle. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to rename it to be enemy idle. So I'm just going to replace rifle with enemy. We'll hit OK and we'll have our copy of an animation there. And then I want to go ahead and grab the animations for the rifle runs. And the rifle run is going to contain these, 8 animations. It's going to have the rifle run backwards loop, the rifle run forward loop, the strafe 135 left loop, the strafe 135 right loop, the strafe 45 left, the strafe 45 right, the strafe run left, and the strafe run right animation. And we're going to have to go ahead and right click on each one of these and duplicate them. And I'm going to do the same thing where I just rename them. I'm going to swap rifle with enemy. And you're going to notice that as soon as you rename it, since it doesn't fall within the search parameters here, it's going to empty out the search. So it might get a little annoying doing this, but you're going to have to retype the search for rifle run every time and redo each one. And you're going to want to do this for all 8 animations. Alright, so once we have that done, if we search in the filter here for enemy, we should have a total of 9 animations. Our enemy idle, plus the strafing forward, backwards, left, right, the 2 45s, and the 2 135s. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to save all. And then I'm going to select all of these. And we're going to right click. And we're going to go ahead in Asset Actions. We're going to go ahead and migrate it. And it's going to show you all kinds of crazy stuff that we're going to transfer over. We'll figure that out when we get that. So we'll hit OK. And then we want to select the content folder in our third-person cover shooter project. And we'll hit OK. And we'll get a content migration completed successfully. So we can move back over to our third-person cover shooter. And then we're going to have the Rifle Anim Set Pro folders back over here. And we're going to have all these in place idle animations. And it's going to come with the UE4 mannequin folder as well. We're not going to need it. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on the UE4 mannequin and delete it. And it's going to say that we have all these animations targeted to it. Do you really want to do it? We're going to force delete. And then for these animations now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select all of them. And I'm going to right click and we're going to retarget anim assets. And we're going to retarget skeleton on existing anim assets. And once this window pops up, we're going to select the UE4 mannequin skeleton and hit select. And it's now retargeted all these animations to our skeleton that we already have. So in the characters folder, under animations, I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this enemy animations. And then in our rifle set Anim Pro animations here, I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to drag and drop them into our enemy character or our enemy animations folder. So now all these animations exist within this enemy animations folder, so we know where they are. I'm going to go ahead and delete the Rifle Anim Set Pro folder. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go into the enemy characters folder. And with the enemy base character blueprint here, I'm going to right click and we're going to create a new animation blueprint. And we want to make sure to select the UE4 mannequin skeleton at the bottom here. And we'll hit OK. And I'm going to call this base enemy underscore anim BP. And we're going to go ahead and open up our base enemy anim BP. And we're going to go into the event graph first. So the first thing I want to do is from our try get pawn owner here, I'm going to drag off, and we're going to go ahead and get our actor rotation. And then we also want to drag off and get velocity. And we also want to check to make sure that nothing has happened to our pawn owner. So if it gets deleted or the character dies or something happens, we want to make sure that nothing is performed if that character isn't alive. So I'm going to drag off of our try get pawn owner, and I'm going to go ahead and search for is valid. And there's a function and the question mark item in here. We want the one with the question mark. And we're going to connect our event blueprint update animation into our is valid execution pin. And then from our is valid, we're going to drag off and we're going to search for calculate direction. And we're going to take the pins from our get actor rotation and we're going to plug it into the base rotation on the calculate direction. And then we're going to get our get velocity and we're going to plug it into the velocity on the calculate direction as well. And then the return value from our calculate direction, we can right click and promote to a variable. And I'm going to call this variable direction. And then I'm going to drag off from our get velocity here. And I want to get length, or I'm going to search for vector length. And we're going to promote this to a variable. And I'm going to call this speed. I'll just plug this into the chain here. So every time we update the animation, we want to check to make sure that our pawn owner is valid. It's going to get the velocity and the rotation of our pawn. And then it's going to perform a calculate direction, which we will set to a variable. And then we'll also set the length of the velocity vector to a variable as well. Next, we're going to go into our anim graph here. I'm going to right click and we're going to have to add a new state machine. And I'm going to plug this into our final animation pose. And we're going to go ahead and open up our new state machine. And in our asset browser, I'm going to search for enemy. And we have our enemy idle. I'm going to drag this out onto our graph, and I will just call it idle. And we're going to connect from our entry into the idle state. So if we compile and save, our enemy character goes into this idle state. Now we're going to have to create a blend space for the character movement. So I'm going to go back to our main window, and I'm going to make this inside of the enemy animations folder. I'm going to right click, we're going to go to animation, and we're going to select blend space. Then we want to find and select the UE4 mannequin, and I'm going to call this enemy movement blend space. And we're going to go ahead and open this up. Now for our parameters here, I'm going to set the x-axis to be our direction. And the axis range is going to be from a negative 180 to a positive 180. And I'm going to need a number of 8 for the axis divisions. For the y-axis label, I'm going to call this speed. And the axis range for this is going to be between 0 and 500. And I'm going to go ahead and apply the parameter changes. In our asset browser to the right, I'm going to search for enemy. And we're going to have to place these animations into the graph. So the first animation here is the run backwards loop. I'm going to go ahead and drag this to the 4 corners. So that's going to place it on the graph 4 times, 1 in each corner. Next, there's the run forward loop, and we're going to need this to be in the very center vertical division. Once again, 1 at the top and 1 at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and drag that into the top there, and 1 at the bottom as well. Next, we have the strafe run 135 left. So I'm going to drag this in, and this is going to be at the second division from the left. Once again, one at the top and one at the bottom. And then we have the strafe run right. So it's going to be one division in from the right-hand side, both at the top and the bottom. The run 45 left is going to be just to the left of the center division. The run 45 right is going to be just to the right of the center. And then lastly, you have the run left and the run right loops, and that's going to be in the remaining places to the left and the right respectively. So these columns are basically going to be from left to right. It's going to be backwards 135, strafe left 45, run forward, right 45, run right loop, right 135, and then backwards again. And then in the animation notifies to the left here, for the notify trigger mode, I want to go to set this as highest weighted animation. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And we can go ahead and go back over to our anim graph. And we can go ahead and search for our enemy movement blend space. And we can drag this out. And I'm just going to call this movement. And we'll drag a connector from idle to movement and a transition from movement back to idle again. So to move from idle to movement, I'm just going to double check on this. And in my blueprint, we're going to get our speed variable. And we just want to make sure that this is greater than 0. And we'll go ahead and connect that into our can answer transition. And then for the transition from movement to idle, this is going to basically happen when our speed is equal to 0. And we'll go ahead and go back to the graph. And real fast, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to open up our movement. And we're going to take our direction and our speed variables. We're going to go ahead and get those. And we're going to plug our direction and speed into the enemy movement blend space respectively. And we'll go back. And then one other thing I want to do is under edit defaults here in the anim preview editor, I want to set this to root motion from everything. And we're going to go ahead and compile and save this. And if we go back to our test map here, and if we're going to have to set the enemy character to actually use this, so we're going to go and open up our base enemy character blueprint. We're going to select our mesh, and to the right under animation, where it says anim blueprint generated, we're going to select our base enemy anim BP. And we'll go ahead and compile and save. And if we go back to our main window, you can see he has his idle pose there. So let's go ahead and simulate and see what happens. So he's going ahead and he's animated when he's running around. And you can play with the speed of the movement of the character to make sure he's moving at the right speed according to the animations. So if I stop this and I go into our enemy character blueprint and select the character movement, if we look at his walking speed, which will be easier to find by searching, so I'll just search for walk speed. I have it set so his max walk speed is 500. And it lines up pretty well with these animations. I believe the default for character movement is 600, so he might be moving faster than the animation makes him look like he is. And the other thing to note is that when he goes ahead and makes a turn, he just snaps into a direction. Now, to get the enemy character to kind of move around a little bit more smoothly when they're walking about, we're going to go ahead and go into our base enemy character blueprint, and we're going to go to the character movement. I'm going to clear out this search here, and I want to search for orient, and there's the option for orient rotation to movement. We want to go ahead and check that, and then we're going to select our class defaults, and I'll clear out that search, and we want to uncheck use controller rotation yaw, and we'll go ahead and compile and save, and we'll go ahead and simulate again. And now you can see he moves a little bit more smoothly when rotating about. In the next video, we'll go ahead and start dealing with the character attacking the player. So we'll start with the assault. It'll be pretty simple. Basically, all the character is going to do is he's going to run towards our player and he's going to shoot at our player. So we're going to have to deal how he handles the combat and how he starts firing. So if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And thanks for watching.